Welcome, students, to a video lecture session on Mark Twain's The Five Boons of Life. This video lecture is going to talk about the author Mark Twain, the kind of writings that he normally produces, and we are going to talk about the structure of this short story, the date of publication, and about how the story progresses in each chapter, which is within this whole short story. So to begin with, we are going to start with a background about the author. Mark Twain, who was born with the original name Samuel Langhorne Clemens, was born on November 30th, 1835 and died on April 21st, 1910. He has adopted the pen name Mark Twain, especially for his writings. He is a well-known American writer, a humorist, an entrepreneur, a publisher, and a lecturer. And he has been praised as the greatest humorist the United States has ever produced. And William Faulkner, one of the writers, also called him the father of American literature. Now, talking about his literary contributions, one of the greatest work that he has contributed in the field of literature is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer in 1876, and also a sequel which was called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This is one of the most popular novels from this writer, and this was called The Great American Novel. He is also interested in probing science and technology, and his writings kind of reflect his love for science and technology throughout. Now, talking in general about his writing and writing styles, we see that Mark Twain began his career by producing writings that were light and humorous verses. Later on, we see that he started writing on themes that depicted or unraveled the vanities, the hypocrisies, and the murderous acts of human beings and mankind. We also see that Huckleberry Finn is one of the examples which reflects his rich humor and criticism. And he is a master of rendering colloquial speech, which helped him to popularize the American literature throughout. And the American themes and languages were more popular because of this writer and his colloquial way of writing. Now, moving directly to the story, The Five Boons of Life is a short story, which can also be called a fable. It was originally published in the year 1902, and it was published under the collection The $30,000 Bequest and Other Stories. The genre in which it belongs is short story, though it does not look like a short story because it has various chapters, very short paragraph-like chapters within. And the whole structure is divided into 5 sections, each of which talk about a chapter and a theme in itself. And the main characters are only two, which is the fairy and a man, who might represent every common man. Now, the most significant thing to know in this short story is what does boon mean, because it talks about the 5 boons of life. So boon in general means kind of a prayer, kind of a petition, a favor, a gift, a blessing, or something that one needs to be thankful for. So definitely we are going to see certain morals of life through the story. Now, talking about the story, The 5 Boons of Life, as I already told you, is a fable which is written to tell people about the significance and meaning of life. And through the story, one can understand the morals. But the moment we understand the moral, the reality, the truth, it's too late. And it's just a kind of wisdom that we gain only before we are about to die. So this is going to tell us about the possibilities of making wrong choices, right choices, and how human beings almost are uh, enlightened only towards the end of their life about how to live their life. And the story is going to talk about the meaningless frolics and the way we try to spend our life, just waste our life making wrong choices. And it is also going to talk about the importance of making wise choices in life. That is the most important significant theme of the story. Now, moving to the structure, as I told you, that the story is divided into 5 sub-chapters, starting with titles like Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, 4, and 5. Now, each chapter, when you see, deals with a different period of time and talks about a different theme. Like we see Chapter 1, uh, which is built upon the idea of pleasure and a choice that the man makes. So let us see how the story opens. And in the beginning, you see the two characters and their encounter. Now, the story is about the encounter, the verbal exchange, and the kind of transaction between the fairy and a man. And this man represents a common man. And on a morning of life, as it begins with, it is not talking about a day, but it talks about a morning of life and then towards the end, the evening and the end of life. So when life begins, when life happens to someone, we as human beings signify the position of that very man, and we have a lot of choices. And it is like a fairy is coming along with a basket of several gifts to us and gives us a choice, like which one do we want to opt for, which one do we choose. And then she also gives a disclaimer to the man that there is only one gift that is valuable out of all these 5. And the man is very instant. He is so quick in selecting that out of these 5 gifts that are called pleasure, love, fame, wealth, and death, I'm going to go with pleasure. So my choice is going to be pleasure. And the moment he selects pleasure, is he has been taken to another understanding of life, the other side of life, which shows that what are the positive aspects that come with pleasure and what are the negative ones, and how pleasure can be a trap for us. We're going to see that later. Similarly, the same kind of thing happens when he selects love, fame, power, until towards the end, when death is about to approach, he realizes about his wrong choices. So the first choice, with every choice, we see one thing that is very significant is the man's learning. With every choice, though he makes a mistake, but then he learns his lesson eventually. So all the gifts that look like very attractive gifts in the beginning, pleasure, love, fame, riches, each one of them were like temporary disguises. And they came as a disguise to look glittery and shiny and beautiful, but then in reality, they were actually conveying the idea of pain, grief, shame, and poverty. So love brought grief, pleasure gave pain, and then fame gave shame, and somehow wealth was uh, about to bring in a kind of poverty. Now, beginning with the first learning, we see that the thing that the man considered to be a pleasure quotient in his life looked like pleasure in the initial days, but then later on he realized that this pleasure was short-lived, it was disappointing, it was in vain, and it was so empty, it was so shallow that it conveys no meaning, no significance in his life. So with this, in the very first chapter, he learns the lesson that pleasure is not the right gift for him. So second time, when the fairy comes again with the 4 remaining gifts, still telling him that the most precious one is still with me, he thinks for a bit of time and thinks that definitely it has to be love. So let me go with love. And the moment he chooses love, he realizes only later that it was a treacherous trader. So the writer puts it up like a treacherous trader, which has somehow done a wrong trading. And somehow he had to pay for that love by sitting and spending his thousands of years in grief. So with love, he understood that all the people he loved were to leave him at some point of time. And he was just sitting next to their graves and crying. So the thing that he thought was love has given him immense amount of pain. And this was the disguise that love came with. Now, the third time, again, with this due course of learning, he understood his lesson. And for the third time, he was really cautious which one to choose and which one not to choose. And even the fairy was certain that maybe this time he's going to make a right choice, a better choice. And so the third time, when the fairy reappeared in the scene, the man selected fame. And he felt that fame and popularity is going to be the right gift for him. But slowly, he realizes only towards the end that fame is a temporary idea. And very soon it brings in new emotions of envy of people. It attracts the envy of people. It brings in detraction. It brings in false acquisitions, and people try to tarnish one's image, and it brings hate. And eventually, the last stage of fame is persecution. So fame isn't a good idea. And the author also tries to put in like pity is the funeral to this kind of a fame. So when you feel like you're famous, it has a very bad ending. And towards the end, it is that people pity you. So once you were a celebrated figure, and today everybody is looking you with the lenses of pity. Now, moving on to the next one, the fourth gift that he selects was wealth. And he thinks that wealth is a solution to everything. And he should have gone for wealth. Wealth is like the answer. And he said, I want wealth and I want to buy and buy things. I want to spend all my money. And very soon, lately, he realized that wealth is also temporary and it does not stay with a person. It keeps on moving. And later on, the man is found lean and thin and pale. He was almost looking sick, and he was just gnawing on, or he was just chewing up on a dry crust of bread. And he was just cursing that time while he was sitting there, he was cursing all the gifts. And he realized towards the end of the fourth gift that all these gifts were a disguise. And he was cursing all the gifts. So ultimately, the only thing that was left was death. And when Perry appeared in the scene with the gifts, the basket did not have death. And the man was willing to have death. He realized that death is the only solution, and death is something that is going to put an end to all the sufferings that he has gone through till now. So when he looked for death, the fairy answered to the man that death is missing in this basket. There is no death. And this gift, this most precious gift of death, has already been given to somebody who required it. And that was a mother's pet, a little child. And why does this idea of death come up with the little child? Because the little child is an innocent child. They are ignorant. They don't have the kind of wisdom that we have. But we human beings, in our great wisdom, make wrong choices. And we see that this child who was not having that wisdom of a grown-up man still trusted the fairy. And he said that you can give me the best that is for me. And the fairy gave him or gave it death. So ultimately, we see that death, which was the most longed gift now, which could have been a blessing for the man, was missing, and he could not even have an access to that death. And now, when the man was all anxious and worried, what to do next? And he asked the fairy, now, what am I supposed to get when death is also missing? And the fairy replies towards the end is, you will get something that you deserve the most, which is not death, because death was a precious gift. And you did not deserve that beauty of death and that precious gift. So now you are going to only deserve one thing, that is the insult of old age, which means now you have to get old and you have to go through the trauma of the old age, physically, mentally. You have to see yourself degrading, and only then you're going to end your life. So this is how the short story ends, bringing in all the morals of life and how ultimately death is shown as the most precious gift. And when we actually long for death, when we are so done with life, when we are done with living, and everything in life is not pleasing to us, we look for death, and that day even death might not be available for